The bridge of the Aurora's dawn hummed quietly as it moved through deep space. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. The ship had been exploring the outer rim for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for signs of life. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Carter from her position at the communication station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she tried to clean up the signal. "It's very weak, but it sounds like a distress call." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. "Can you make it clearer?" Lisa shook her head. "It's coming from really far away, maybe the edge of known space. The signal is breaking up badly." Dr. Amanda Brooks, the ship's expert on alien life, looked up from her research station. "Let me hear it. I might be able to figure out what language it is." The bridge fell silent as Lisa played the signal through the speakers. Strange sounds filled the air, clicks, whistles, and what sounded like water moving. The voice speaking was clearly not human. "That's definitely an alien language," Amanda said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "Give me a few minutes to run it through the translation computer." Jake nodded and turned to his navigation officer. "Chloe, can you figure out where this signal is coming from?" Chloe Martinez worked at her controls, her face serious with concentration. "It's coming from a system about 2 weeks away at maximum speed. According to our star charts, there's supposed to be an alien species there called the Zaphirians." "I've heard of them," said Ryan Palmer, the chief engineer, as he entered the bridge. "They were kicked out of the Galactic Council a few months ago, something about refusing to give up mining rights to their moon." Amanda's computer beeped and she looked at the results with growing concern. "Captain, you need to hear this. The translation isn't perfect, but the message is clear enough." She pressed a button and a mechanical voice began speaking in English. "Help us. Our star is dying. The mining has made it unstable. We have maybe 6 months before it explodes. The Council has forbidden anyone to help us. We are alone. Please. If anyone can hear this, we are dying." The bridge went completely quiet. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. An entire species was facing extinction, and the galaxy had turned its back on them. "Captain," Chloe said quietly, "I'm reading the official reports about that system. The Galactic Council has declared it off limits. No ships are allowed to enter." Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down heavily. He thought about the message they had just heard. Somewhere out there, millions of beings were waiting to die because they had refused to give up their home to more powerful aliens. "What do we know about the Zaphirians?" he asked. Amanda pulled up files on her screen. "They're an aquatic species. They live underwater in cities on their homeworld. They're known to be peaceful but very proud. They've never asked for help from anyone before. And now they're desperate enough to send distress calls into empty space," Ryan said grimly. Lisa turned around in her chair. "Captain, I'm still receiving the signal. It's automatic, playing on repeat. They must have set it up to broadcast continuously, hoping someone would hear." Jake stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars ahead. He thought about his orders from Earth Command. They were supposed to explore and map, not get involved in galactic politics. But this wasn't politics. This was about saving lives. "Ryan, how long would it take us to reach their system?" 2 weeks at maximum speed, like Chloe said. "But Captain, our orders from Earth Command were very specific. We're not supposed to interfere with other species' problems." "This isn't interference," Jake said firmly. "This is rescue." He turned back to face his crew. These people had been with him for years. They had explored dozens of systems together, faced dangers and discoveries side by side. He knew what kind of people they were. "I'm going to ask each of you a question, and I want honest answers. If we go to help the Zaphirians, we'll be disobeying direct orders from Earth Command. We could face court-martial when we get back. But if we don't go, an entire species dies while we watch. What do you think we should do?" Lisa was the first to speak. "I say we go. I can't live with myself knowing we could have helped and didn't." "Agreed," said Amanda. "As a scientist, I took an oath to preserve life wherever I find it. That includes alien life." Ryan nodded slowly. "My family didn't raise me to turn my back on people who need help. I'm in." Chloe looked up from her navigation station. "I've already started plotting a course, Captain. We can be there in 13 days if we push the engines." Jake felt a surge of pride in his crew. These were good people, the kind who would risk everything to do what was right. All right then. But this decision affects the entire ship, not just the bridge crew. I want everyone to vote on this. Lisa, call all hands to the main assembly room. An hour later, the entire crew of the Aurora's Dawn was gathered together. Jake explained the situation clearly and honestly. He told them about the distress signal, the dying star, and the Galactic Council's refusal to help. He also told them about the consequences they might face for disobeying orders. When he finished speaking, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Chief Petty Officer Kevin Torres stood up. "Captain, I've served in space for 20 years. I've never been more proud to serve with a crew than I am right now. Let's go save some aliens." The vote was unanimous. Every single member of the crew voted to go to the Zaphirian system. As the Aurora's Dawn changed course and increased speed toward the dying star, Jake sat in his quarters writing a message to Earth Command. He explained their decision and took full responsibility for it. Whatever happened next, he wanted his superiors to know that his crew had acted with honor. The ship raced through space toward an uncertain future, carrying with it humanity's first independent act of interstellar mercy. In 2 weeks, they would either save a species or die trying. For Jake Morrison and his crew, that was an easy choice to make. The Aurora's Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zaphirian system, and immediately everyone on the bridge could see that something was terribly wrong. The star that should have been bright blue was now flickering between orange and red like a candle in the wind. "My God," whispered Chloe as she stared at her instruments. "The star is completely unstable. I'm reading massive solar flares and core fluctuations." Dr. Amanda Brooks was already scanning the system with her scientific equipment. "The third planet should be Zephyros Prime, their homeworld. I'm detecting huge amounts of radiation, but there are still life signs down there." Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display that Ryan Palmer had put up on the main screen. What he saw made his heart sink. Several cities on the planet's surface were nothing but smoking ruins. Massive craters scarred the landscape where weapons had struck from orbit. "The hegemony really worked them over," Ryan said grimly. "Those aren't natural disasters. Those are bombardment sites." Lisa Carter was working frantically at her communication station. "I'm trying to reach them, but there's so much interference from the star that I can barely get through." "Keep trying," Jake ordered. "Amanda, what can you tell me about their world?" Amanda pulled up her files on the Zaphirians. "Their planet is mostly ocean, with small continents. But they don't live on land, they live underwater. Their cities are built on the seafloor or floating in deep water. That might be why some of them survived the bombardment." "I've got something," Lisa called out excitedly. "Very weak signal, but it's definitely coming from the planet." The bridge speakers crackled with static, and then a voice came through. The translation computer worked to convert the alien words into English, though the mechanical voice couldn't hide the weariness and pain in the original speaker. "Unknown vessel, this is Elder Council Speaker Veltar of Zephyros Prime. We do not recognize your ship design. State your intentions." Jake stepped forward toward the communication station. "Speaker Veltar, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Aurora's Dawn. We received your distress signal and have come to offer assistance." There was a long pause before the reply came. "Humans, we have heard of your species, but you are new to galactic politics. You should not be here. The Galactic Council has forbidden any contact with our world." "We don't care what the Galactic Council says," Jake replied firmly. "We came because you asked for help." Another pause, even longer this time. When Veltar spoke again, his voice was filled with suspicion and something that might have been hope. "Many species have promised help before abandoning us when the hegemony applied pressure. Why should humans be different?" Jake looked around at his crew, seeing determination on every face. "Because we don't abandon people who need help. May we approach your world and speak face to face?" It took 3 hours of careful negotiation before Veltar agreed to meet with them. The Zaphirians were afraid that any ship approaching their world would be destroyed by hegemony forces still patrolling the system's edge. Amanda worked with Kevin Torres, their cultural specialist, to prepare for first contact. They studied everything humanity knew about Zaphirian culture and biology. The aliens were aquatic, breathing water instead of air. They were highly intelligent and had once been respected members of the galactic community. Their society is based on collective decision-making, Kevin explained as they prepared for the meeting. Individual Zaphirians don't make big decisions alone. Everything goes through their elder councils. The Aurora's dawn carefully approached Zephyros Prime, with Chloe constantly monitoring for any signs of hostile ships. The planet was beautiful, despite the devastation. Vast blue oceans dotted with floating cities that looked like jellyfish made of crystal and metal. "I'm reading massive underwater cities," Amanda reported as they entered orbit. "The architecture is incredible. They've built entire civilizations beneath the waves." Lisa established a stable communication link, and Speaker Veltar guided them to a safe landing area near one of the larger underwater cities. The meeting would take place in a special chamber filled with water for the Zaphirians and air for the humans, separated by a transparent barrier. When Jake first saw Veltar, he was struck by the alien's beauty and obvious intelligence. The Zaphirian was tall and graceful, with scales that shimmered like living jewels. His large eyes held both wisdom and deep sadness. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said through the translation system, "you have traveled far to reach a world marked for death. I must ask again, what do you hope to gain by helping us?" Jake had thought about this question during the long journey to Zephyros Prime. "We hope to gain the knowledge that we did the right thing. Nothing more." Veltar studied him for a long moment. "Your words sound sincere, but words are easy. The hegemony offered friendship before they demanded our moon's crystals. The council promised protection before they abandoned us." "I understand your suspicion," Jake replied. "But we're not asking you to trust us completely. Just let us help you survive. You can judge our intentions by our actions." Dr. Brooks stepped forward, her scientific equipment ready. "Speaker Veltar, may I scan your star? We need to understand exactly how much time we have." Over the next several hours, Amanda and the Zaphirian scientists worked together to analyze the dying star. The results were worse than anyone had feared. "The star will go supernova in 127 days, Amanda reported to Jake privately. "The hegemony's mining operations destabilized the core beyond any hope of repair." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 127 days to save an entire species. Chloe had been conducting detailed scans of the planet and surrounding space. "Captain, I count 12 major underwater cities and dozens of smaller settlements. Population estimates suggest about 2.3 million Zaphirians total." 2.3 million, Jake repeated quietly. "That's more people than we could evacuate with 100 ships like ours." Ryan had been thinking about the technical challenges. "Even if we had enough ships, how do you transport aquatic aliens? They need water to breathe, specific pressure and temperature. We can't just load them into standard transport ships." As the day wore on, Jake began to understand the true scope of what they faced. This wasn't a simple rescue mission. It was an attempt to save an entire civilization with resources that were completely inadequate for the task. But as he watched his crew working tirelessly alongside the Zaphirian scientists, sharing knowledge and ideas despite the language barriers, Jake knew they had made the right choice. Even if they failed, they would fail while trying to do something that mattered. That evening, as the Aurora's dawn orbited the dying world, Jake made a decision that would change everything. He called his crew together and outlined a plan that seemed impossible but was their only hope. "We're going to contact every human colony and ask for help, not through official channels, directly. We're going to tell them what's happening here and ask them to send ships." Lisa looked up from her communication station. "Captain, that's essentially declaring independence from Earth Command's authority." Jake nodded grimly. "Yes, it is. But sometimes you have to choose between following orders and doing what's right. I choose doing what's right." The message went out on every frequency humans used for communication. Lisa Carter worked around the clock to broadcast their plea to every human colony, mining station, and research outpost within range. The message was simple and direct. The entire species was about to die, and humanity was their only hope. Jake Morrison had recorded the message himself, standing on the bridge of the Aurora's dawn, with the dying Zaphirian star visible through the viewports behind him. "This is Captain Jake Morrison speaking to all human colonies and ships. We have discovered a species called the Zaphirians, who are facing complete extinction. Their star will explode in less than 4 months, and the Galactic Council has abandoned them. We cannot save them alone. We need every ship, every volunteer, and every resource you can spare. This is not an official Earth Command operation. This is humanity choosing to do what is right." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The first ship to arrive came from Mars Colony, just 5 days after the message went out. Captain Beth Williams commanded a converted cargo hauler called the Red Planet Runner, and she brought 40 volunteers with her. "We loaded up with as much life support equipment as we could carry," Beth told Jake when she docked with the Aurora's dawn. Mars Colony voted to send everything they could spare. More ships arrived every day. The Europa Research Station sent 3 hospital ships with medical teams. The asteroid miners from the Belt sent cargo haulers loaded with construction equipment. Even the tiny outpost on Pluto's moon sent a single ship with 6 volunteers. Dr. Amanda Brooks found herself coordinating with scientists from across human space. The challenge of transporting aquatic aliens had captured the imagination of every engineer and biologist in the colonies. "We need to convert cargo holds into massive aquariums," explained Dr. Carl Jensen, a marine biologist who had come all the way from the Titan colonies. "But it's not just about holding water. We need to maintain the exact chemical balance, temperature, and pressure that the Zaphirians need to survive." Tony Rodriguez, an engineer from Mars Station, had brought detailed plans for modular habitat systems. "We can build these units in any cargo hold. Each one can support about 50 Zaphirians for several months of travel." The Zaphirians watched in amazement as the human fleet grew larger every day. Speaker Veltar spent hours with Jake, trying to understand why humans would risk so much for strangers. "Your species confuses us, Captain Morrison," Veltar said during one of their daily meetings. "In galactic politics, every action has a price. What price do you expect us to pay for this rescue?" Jake had heard this question many times now, from Zaphirians, and even from some of his own crew. "The only price we ask is that you survive. That's enough. But surely you must want something. Trading rights? Access to our crystal technology? Military alliance?" "Speaker Veltar, let me tell you a story," Jake said, settling back in his chair. "When I was a child on Earth, our house caught fire. Our neighbors, people we barely knew, rushed into the burning building to save my family. When my father asked them why they risked their lives for us, they said it was because that's what neighbors do. That's what we're doing here, we're being neighbors." Veltar was quiet for a long time after that conversation. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived from colonies Jake had never heard of. Independent traders abandoned their cargo runs to join the rescue effort. Even some Earth command vessels showed up, their captains claiming they were conducting extended patrol missions in the area. But not everyone was happy with humanity's actions. The hegemony had been sending increasingly angry messages, demanding that the humans leave Zaphirian space immediately. "You are violating Galactic Council edicts," the hegemony admiral had said in his latest message. "There will be economic consequences for your species if you continue this illegal intervention." Jake's response had been broadcast to the entire galaxy. "We don't abandon people who need help. That's what makes us human. If you want to punish us for saving lives, then the galaxy will see exactly what kind of beings you really are." The message had caused quite a stir in galactic politics. Several species had begun asking uncomfortable questions about why the Zaphirians had been abandoned in the first place. As the human fleet assembled around Zephyros Prime, the scale of the operation became clear. Over 800 ships now orbited the dying world, from massive colony transports to tiny personal craft piloted by individual volunteers. Commander Nicole Foster, Chief Medical Officer of the fleet, had established field hospitals on 3 of the larger ships. "We're seeing a lot of radiation sickness among the Zaphirians," she reported to Jake. The dying star is putting out massive amounts of harmful energy. Gary Stevens, who had been elected as the fleet's logistics coordinator, was working 18-hour days trying to organize the rescue effort. "We have enough transport capacity for about 60% of the population," he told Jake during a planning meeting. "We need more ships, or we need to find a way to pack more Zaphirians into each habitat module." The solution came from an unexpected source. The Zaphirians themselves began contributing to the rescue effort. Their crystal technology, it turned out, could make human life support systems much more efficient. "If we integrate Zaphirian crystals into our habitat modules, we can support twice as many beings in the same space," Tony Rodriguez explained excitedly. "The crystals can purify water and air while using very little energy." Elder Veltar had initially been reluctant to share their advanced technology, but as he watched humans working tirelessly to save his people, his attitude began to change. "Captain Morrison," he said one day, "I have watched your species for weeks now. You work without rest, you share your resources freely, and you ask for nothing in return. I begin to understand that humans are different from other species in the galaxy." "We're not that different," Jake replied. "We just believe that some things are more important than politics or profit." "Perhaps," Veltar said thoughtfully. "But if that is true, then humans may be the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous? Dangerous to those who profit from others' suffering? Dangerous to those who would abandon the weak? Dangerous to the established order that says some lives matter more than others?" As the rescue operation entered its final planning phase, Jake realized that Veltar was probably right. By choosing to save the Zaphirians, humanity had declared that they would not accept the galaxy's cruel rules about who deserved to live and who deserved to die. The dying star pulsed ominously in the darkness, a constant reminder that time was running out. But around it, the largest rescue fleet in galactic history prepared to attempt the impossible. 847 ships, crewed by volunteers from across human space, ready to risk everything to save a species they had never met. In Nightsatradar, the cargo holds and assembly bays, workers from dozens of human colonies labored alongside Zaphirian engineers to build the habitat modules that would carry an entire civilization to safety. The work was hard, the timeline was impossible, and failure would mean the death of millions. But humanity had never been good at accepting impossible odds. The evacuation began at dawn on Zephyros Prime, though the dying star made it hard to tell day from night anymore. The orange light flickered constantly, and solar flares lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's dawn, watching hundreds of ships move into position around the planet. Each ship had been assigned specific underwater cities to evacuate. The coordination required was staggering, like conducting an orchestra with 800 musicians scattered across an entire solar system. "All ships report ready, Captain," Lisa Carter announced from her communications station. She had barely slept in weeks, coordinating messages between the rescue fleet and the Zaphirian cities below. "Begin evacuation operations," Jake ordered. Down in the depths of Zephyros Prime's oceans, the rescue teams went to work. Dr. Nicole Foster had trained hundreds of human medics to work in aquatic environments, and they now swam alongside Zaphirian families, helping the sick and elderly into the specially designed transport pods. "The radiation levels are getting worse every day," Nicole reported from the underwater city of Velmiran. "Many of the Zaphirians are too weak to swim to the transport points. We're having to carry them." The transport pods themselves were marvels of human Zaphirian cooperation. Each one was essentially a small submarine filled with perfectly balanced seawater, equipped with life support systems powered by Zaphirian crystals. Tony Rodriguez and his engineering teams had worked around the clock to build over 10,000 of them. "Pod Transport 77 Alpha is having pressure problems," came a voice over the communication system. "We're losing depth control, Commander." Steve Murphy, leading one of the rescue squadrons, immediately responded. "Rescue Team Delta, move to assist 77 Alpha. We're not losing anyone today." But the evacuation was not going smoothly everywhere. 3 of the underwater cities were too deep for human rescue teams to reach safely. and the Zaphirians there were too weak from radiation sickness to make the journey to the surface. Gary Stevens, coordinating the massive logistics operation, was pulling his hair out trying to solve the problem. "We need diving suits that can handle pressures at 12,000 feet underwater, and we need them now," he told his team. The solution came from an unexpected source. The asteroid miners, who were used to working in the harsh vacuum of space, volunteered to modify their pressure suits for underwater work. "Spacesuits and diving suits aren't that different," explained miner Captain Ruth Davis as her team prepared for the dangerous dive. "Both keep you alive in environments that want to kill you." Ruth and her miners made the deepest rescue dive in human history, descending to the ocean floor cities that had been thought unreachable. They brought up over 50,000 Zaphirians from the depths, including many of the species' most important cultural leaders and scientists. Meanwhile, Dr. Amanda Brooks was dealing with a different kind of crisis. As Zaphirian families were loaded into the habitat modules aboard the human ships, cultural conflicts began to emerge. "The youngsters are adapting well to the cramped conditions," she reported to Jake. "But the elders are having trouble. In Zaphirian culture, social status is partly determined by the size of your living space. Putting high-ranking elders in small habitat modules is seen as deeply insulting." Kevin Torres, working as cultural liaison, came up with a creative solution. "We designate certain areas of each ship as honor spaces, larger areas where the elders can gather for important meetings and ceremonies. It's not about the size of their sleeping quarters. It's about having a place where their status is recognized." The evacuation continued day and night, but time was running out faster than anyone had hoped. The star's instability was increasing exponentially, and massive solar flares were now a daily occurrence. "We're getting reports of complete system failures on 12 ships," Ryan Palmer announced grimly during one of the daily briefings. "The radiation is frying electronic systems faster than we can repair them." Some of the human crews began showing signs of radiation poisoning themselves. Dr. Foster had to establish treatment centers aboard the hospital ships to care for both humans and Zaphirians suffering from exposure to the dying star's energy. "The medical teams are exhausted," Nicole reported. "We're treating over 1,000 new cases of radiation sickness every day." But just when things seemed darkest, the Zaphirians began to contribute more than anyone had expected. Their crystal technology wasn't just useful for life support, it could also shield ships from radiation. Elder Veltar personally supervised the installation of Zaphirian shielding systems on the most damaged human ships. "Your people risk their lives for ours," he told Jake. "The least we can do is protect them while they work." The cooperation between humans and Zaphirians was becoming something beautiful to watch. Human engineers worked side by side with Zaphirian technicians, sharing knowledge and solving problems together. Children from both species played together in the ship corridors, communicating through gestures and laughter when words failed. "I've never seen anything like it," Amanda told Jake one evening as they watched human and Zaphirian children playing a game that seemed to involve floating water bubbles and catching them. Two completely different species, working together, like they've known each other for generations. But the evacuation still faced its greatest test. With only 2 weeks left before the star was expected to explode, they had evacuated less than 80% of the Zaphirian population. Nearly 500,000 people were still on the dying world. The problem was transportation capacity. Even with Zaphirian crystal technology improving efficiency, the human ships simply couldn't carry any more people safely. The solution came from the Zaphirians themselves. Elder Veltar called Jake to an emergency meeting in the deepest part of the ocean in a city that had been the species' capital for over 1,000 years. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said, his voice heavy with emotion, "we have made a decision that breaks our hearts but saves our people." Jake waited, knowing that whatever Veltar was about to say would be important. "We will abandon our cities," Veltar continued. "All of them. We will strip them of their most important cultural artifacts and historical records, but we will leave the buildings themselves. This will free up transport space for people instead of objects." Jake felt his throat tighten. He knew what this meant to the Zaphirians. Their underwater cities were works of art that had taken centuries to build. Abandoning them would be like humans abandoning Earth itself. Elder Veltar, are you sure about this? Our cities are beautiful, Captain Morrison, but they are just stone and metal. Our people are irreplaceable. We choose to save what matters most. The final 2 weeks of evacuation were a desperate race against time. Every available space on Alboy, every ship was filled with Zaphirians. Cargo holds, maintenance areas, even corridors were converted into temporary living spaces. The human crews moved into smaller quarters to make room for more refugees. Some volunteers chose to sleep in shifts so that their bunks could be used by Zaphirian families. We've got every Zaphirian loaded except for the volunteer crews staying behind to maintain the transport systems, Gary Stevens reported as the star's fluctuations became violent enough to shake the planet's surface. Jake felt a moment of confusion. Volunteer crews staying behind? About 3,000 Zaphirians volunteered to operate the transport systems until the very last moment, Veltar explained. They will ensure that every single person gets off the planet safely. But who will rescue the rescue crews? Veltar smiled sadly. That, Captain Morrison, is where we must trust in human stubbornness and heroism. Jake looked at his own crew, seeing determination on every face. They all knew what he was thinking. The Aurora's Dawn and a few other fast ships would have to stay until the very end, picking up the last Zaphirians before the star exploded. Well, Jake said with a grin that he didn't quite feel, I guess we're about to find out just how good our pilots really are. The star exploded just as the last rescue ship cleared the system's edge. Captain Jake Morrison watched through the Aurora's Dawn's rear viewports as the Zaphirian sun collapsed into itself and then erupted in a brilliant flash that would be visible across half the galaxy. The shockwave caught up with them 3 hours later, shaking the ship violently but causing no real damage. All ships report safe distance achieved, Lisa Carter announced, her voice hoarse with exhaustion and relief. Every single Zaphirian has been accounted for. Jake slumped in his command chair, feeling the weight of the past 4 months finally hitting him. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had evacuated an entire species from a dying world. 2.3 million Zaphirians were alive and safe aboard human ships. But now came an equally difficult challenge. What to do with them? The Zaphirians couldn't go back to their homeworld. It no longer existed. The Galactic Council had made it clear that no other council species would accept them as refugees. Earth didn't have the aquatic environments they needed to survive. The rescue fleet was running low on supplies and couldn't support the Zaphirian population indefinitely. Captain, came a voice from the communications system. It was Commander Patricia Hayes from Kepler Station, a research outpost orbiting a gas giant 3 weeks away. I've been following your rescue operation. I think I might have a solution to your refugee problem. Jake was so tired he could barely think straight, but he managed to respond. We're listening, Commander Hayes. Kepler Station studies the ice-covered moons of the gas giant Kepler-7. 3 of those moons have vast underground oceans, deeper and more extensive than any ocean on Zephyros Prime. The water is clean, the pressure is right, and there's enough space for the entire Zaphirian population. Dr. Amanda Brooks perked up at this news. Commander Hayes, are you saying the moons could support permanent Zaphirian colonies? Better than that, Doctor. The moons are actually better suited for Zaphirian life than their original homeworld was. No dangerous radiation, no unstable star, and the underground oceans are protected from any external threats. Elder Veltar, who had been staying aboard the Aurora's Dawn during the evacuation, listened to this conversation with growing amazement. Commander Hayes, you would give us entire worlds? Patricia Hayes's voice was warm and friendly. We'd be sharing them with you, Elder Veltar. Kepler Station has been pretty lonely out here. We could use some neighbors. The journey to the Kepler system took 3 weeks, and during that time something remarkable happened. The cooperation between humans and Zaphirians that had begun during the rescue operation continued and deepened. Human engineers worked with Zaphirian architects to design underwater cities for the new moons. Zaphirian scientists shared their crystal technology freely, helping humans develop better life support systems and energy sources. Children from both species played together so naturally that language barriers seemed to disappear. They're teaching each other games, Amanda observed as she watched human and Zaphirian children playing in one of the habitat modules. The kids don't care about species differences at all. When the fleet arrived at Kepler-7, the sight was breathtaking. 3 ice-covered moons orbited the massive gas giant, their surfaces gleaming like pearls. Beneath the ice, sensors revealed oceans deeper and more pristine than anything on the original Zaphirian homeworld. The first permanent settlement was established on the moon designated Kepler-7c. Human and Zaphirian workers collaborated to drill through the ice and establish the first underwater city in the new system. They named it New Velmaran, after the capital city that had been lost with Zephyros Prime. 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new Kepler station, watching as Zaphirian children swam freely through the crystal-clear waters of their new home. The underwater cities were even more beautiful than the ones that had been lost, a blend of Zaphirian artistic traditions and human engineering that created something entirely new. "Captain Morrison," came a familiar voice behind him. Jake turned to see Elder Veltar approaching, moving easily in the water-filled corridors that connected the station's different sections. "Elder Veltar, how are the new settlements developing?" "Beyond our greatest hopes," Veltar replied. "The youngsters especially love the deeper waters. They can swim farther and dive deeper than they ever could on Zephyros Prime. But that is not why I asked to speak with you." Jake waited, curious about what the Zaphirian leader wanted to discuss. "The Galactic Council has been watching what happened here," Veltar continued. "They are disturbed by humanity's actions, not just the rescue itself, but what it represents." "What do you mean?" "For thousands of years, the galaxy has operated under certain rules. The strong dominate the weak. Species in crisis are abandoned. If helping them is inconvenient, political alliances matter more than moral principles." Veltar paused, his large eyes studying Jake carefully. "Humans have broken those rules." Jake nodded slowly. "And they don't like that. They are terrified of it, Captain Morrison. You have shown the galaxy that there is an alternative to the way things have always been done. Other species are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about why their own crises were ignored." As if to prove Veltar's point, Lisa Carter's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, we're receiving a message from the Alarian system. It's encoded for maximum secrecy." Jake and Veltar made their way to the communications center, where Lisa had the message ready to play. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly alien, but spoke in heavily accented English. "Human Captain Morrison, this is Ambassador Kethran of the Alarian Republic. We know of your rescue of the Zaphirians. Our own world faces a crisis that our government refuses to acknowledge. Toxic storms are killing our people, but admitting this would embarrass our leaders on the Galactic Council. We dare not ask for official help, but perhaps humans might be willing to investigate privately." Jake looked at Veltar, then at his crew, seeing the same expression on every face. They all knew what this meant. The Zaphirian rescue had been just the beginning. "Lisa, send a reply to the Alarians. Tell them we'll be there within the month." Amanda. Brooks spoke up from her science station. "Captain, if we keep doing this, rescuing species that the galaxy has abandoned, we're going to make some very powerful enemies." "Probably," Jake agreed. "But we're also going to make friends with the people who matter most, the ones who need help." Veltar moved closer to the group of humans. "Captain Morrison, if you continue down this path, humanity will become the conscience of the galaxy. That is a dangerous role to play." Jake thought about all the species out there who might be suffering in silence, abandoned by galactic politics just as the Zaphirians had been. He thought about the children, human and Zaphirian, playing together in the depths of New Velmaran, growing up in a universe where helping others was more important than following rules. "Elder Veltar, my grandmother used to tell me that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I think the galaxy has been doing nothing for far too long." 3 days later, the Aurora's Dawn departed Kepler Station with a volunteer crew and a new mission. In the cargo holds, they carried medical supplies, emergency equipment, and a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. "Humanity stands with those who need help, regardless of politics or consequences. As they jumped to faster than light, travel toward the Alarian system, Jake realized that they had accidentally started something that could change the entire galaxy. The Zaphirian rescue had proven that the old rules didn't have to be accepted. Species didn't have to suffer alone. Someone was willing to help, even when it was difficult or dangerous. Behind them, in the underground oceans of Kepler 7c, the first generation of Zaphirian children born in their new home swam freely through waters that sparkled with both alien crystals and human technology. They would grow up knowing that when their people faced extinction, strangers from across the galaxy had risked everything to save them. And in the depths of space, a simple message continued broadcasting on all frequencies. This is humanity. We don't abandon people who need help. If you're in trouble, call us, we'll come. The galaxy would never be the same.